think it's important that we share, that we communicate, that we are open, and that we grow together to achieve.
Because we are the voice of what wellness is about, and it's up to us to spread the message.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, or good afternoon, depending where you are in the world. Mark Maloney here, MD of Professional Beauty. I'm very pleased to announce our opening session for Professional Beauty's World Spa and Wellness Virtual Conference. We're streaming from 6 countries around the world, and today is the first of 3 days where we brought together 70 speakers amongst the top operators and spas, top consultants and suppliers. There's a lot of noise out there at the moment on the internet, and we hope that these 3 days will give you genuine inspiration and genuine and concise answers. The world is in various stages of reopening and lockdown, and so we've brought ideas from around the world to give perspective of people who are out there running and doing, as opposed to just advising. I'd like to say a particular thank you to Biologic Research and Lemmy for their support, and today's sponsor, BC Software. And I'd like to introduce today's host of the panel, Emma Barron, Deputy General Manager of our business in Dubai. Emma, over to you. Take it away.
Hi, Mark. Thank you so much for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. Yes, we are live here in the Middle East, and I'm very excited to be hosting the first session of the 3-day global conference. Just some house rules before we get started. There, hopefully, time permitting, will be the opportunity to ask questions at the end of the session. So please pop your questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and I'd be happy to ask them on your behalf. We are streaming live globally across multiple social media channels, which is incredible. So welcome to those of you who are joining us via those channels. If you have friends or colleagues who haven't made it into the Zoom webinar session, please direct them to the Professional Beauty Facebook and YouTube pages where they can tap in and watch us live there. So my panelists that are here with me today, I'm very, very pleased to have on board, is Pierre-Louis Delapalme, who is the co-chairman, or co-president, sorry, of Biologic Research and are the platinum sponsors of this event. We have Lindsay Madden-Adu, Global Director of Wellbeing at Raffles, Orient Express, Fairmont McGallery and Movenpick. We have Yolanda Moraes, Regional Director of Spa for the Jumeirah Group. Christian Kiefer, who is CEO and founder of Raya Spa, the Retreat Palm, Dubai. And finally, Kamal Khalil, Director of Spa and Recreation, Phoenicia Hotel, Beirut, Lebanon. Thank you all so much for joining us today. These are all obviously amazing spa leaders, but what we also have on this panel is Dr. Saliha Afridi, who is the Managing Director and a clinical psychologist at a local wellbeing centre here in Dubai called the Lighthouse Arabia. Now, Dr. Saliha will be very much involved in this conversation that we are having today to give expert advice and insights. So, what will we be speaking on today? We are very much wanting to focus on the now. As I'm sure many of you across the world aren't really sure when you're going to be reopening, as we're very unsure here in the Middle East. We wanted to really focus on our teams because they are the core essence and core skeleton of our businesses. And within this situation where we're not sure when we are going to return to work, we need to really be sure that our teams are well looked after now, when they eventually are back at work and we have reopened. So we'll be sharing our insights of that, and then we'll be ending the session on silver linings. What opportunities, what positive opportunities have come out of COVID-19? So the topic of our session today is the well-being, supporting your teams during COVID-19 and beyond. And I want to just hand over to Lindsay, who has recently written an incredible article all around the essence of this topic. And we really felt it was important to speak on this today. So Lindsay, over to you. Why is this such a key topic, do you think, to speak on for now? Oh, Lindsay, I think you're on mute.
I'm on mute. Sorry. I'm human. Hello to everyone. Thanks so much, Emma, for the handover. It's great to be here today. And thank you for inviting me to be on the panel with my fellow colleagues. It's interesting because I wrote this article, I started writing, it probably took me about 4 weeks. Not that I'm an expert in this field, but it seemed like every single week there was something different going on. There was something different to adapt to. Different regions of the world that I was seeing from my seat were in a different situation. But I think what was really well received about the article is that most people that were reaching out to me was saying that we were all going through the same thing. I just happened to be one of the many that decided to write about it. And I think a lot of those people that I was in touch with was my colleagues. And I think it's really important as the frontliners of the medical teams and all of the other people who were working around us. Our frontline runners are our people. And I think it's an opportunity for us now to talk about what are we going to do for our people and how are we going to keep them safe? Because there's a lot of what are we doing to get business? What are we doing from a marketing perspective? You know, what are we doing for our guests? But at the end of the day, it's our people who are returning to our guests. And so I think it's a really great opportunity for us to come together as a collective and to start discussing what some of these opportunities are going to be.
Absolutely, thank you. And anyone who is interested in reading Lindsay's article, we will be posting it online after the session. It's definitely worth a read. So over to the first part of our session, and over to Yolanda first. What are you doing right now within Jumeirah Group to really support the mental well-being of your teams?
Thank you, Emma. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining our session. So we have recently launched a platform that is app-based. It's called Colleague Connect, and that is for all of the Jumeirah colleagues, and it is a wonderful platform that's creating a sense of family and connection. And it's also to ensure that our colleagues really feel connected during this time and stay connected. This platform is based on 4 pillars. We started off with 3 actually, but as the global situation evolves, we've added a 4th one last week. So the 4 pillars are called, one is called J Active, and that is for all of the spa tips, wellness, some fitness tips, mental well-being. And then the second pillar is called J Learning, and that is to provide continuous learning opportunities as well as inspirational videos from our leaders. And the third pillar, we just want our colleagues to also have fun. That is called J Social. So it's kind of like a company Facebook page where we also host some internal competitions, some quizzes, yeah, for everyone to also express their personal side into a professional platform. And then recently we saw the need to have a 4th pillar, and that is called J Safety. With safety currently really being at the forefront, we're filling this platform with daily insights as to how our hotels are adapting and evolving during the pandemic, and also to reassure our colleagues that we are putting their well-being first. So yeah, great platform called Colleague Connect.
Amazing, incredible. Now, Kamal, you've got a similar platform that you also run within your property. Can you elaborate a bit more on that? Oh, Kamal, you're on mute.
Thanks for joining, and hello everyone. So as Yolanda was saying as well, from we don't wait for the COVID-19 period to look after the employees and our colleagues' well-being and motivation. Actually, but during this period, especially with all the what's happening around the world, we took more this as priority and number one focus to look after the team, as their morale and motivation is essential. As what we have done to boost this movement with the team is we took the active approach, which is the active letters of A4 assurance for the people now on task force in Saudi Arabia. People wants to go back home, they don't know the airport, so just assure the employees and get the response to them, caring about them. Also, when the hotel is not receiving after quarantine and we don't have enough clients, so everybody is edgy, don't want to know, so the communication was going forward and ongoing. Team spirit, so within WhatsApp groups and Facebook group, we do Facebook meetings with the team on the distance and keep on communicating. So inspiring them as well for learning, through different platforms as well. We have the company e-learning application, as well as we have online applications through different topics, which is related to entertainment, mindfulness activities, and the vitality for life, for their well-being, which is we want to keep them active and made some competitions competition on different topics like best room setup, best photo taken within the accommodation. And during this period, we really focus on the social distancing. We working more and talking more positively about it in distance socializing, where people during this period more and more, they want to connect with their loved ones, looking after them, and just to look after this this emotional engagement with the team to keep them really positive and excited for the day we open again and come back to work.
Amazing, super important. And that now leads me on to Chris. You really have emphasized the importance of keeping connected and keeping in line with communication with your team. So can you expand a little bit on what you've been up to?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Lindsay and Jolanda and Kamal have touched base on many points. It's just that many smaller organizations might not have the chance to set up these big training facilities online. You know, what we have done is we have distributed laptops actually to all staff accommodations that we had, all laptops from the IT. We set up, you know, Zoom training sessions twice a week. I think now is really the time to show presence as a leader. You know, like Kamal said, there's a lot of anxiety, I think, which we have experienced. And that is driven by the fake news. I mean, you guys have seen it all over the world, you know, what's popping up, all these crazy, you know, WhatsApp videos and things that are just fake. And the problem is when people are in a fear state, they're feasting on these things and they take it for granted, actually, which is quite dangerous. So I think the message that I really want to make clear is take this anxiety away, try to be present for the staff, and try to be there for them at the moment. Be a counselor, listening to them is very important at the moment, because they're afraid. They're afraid to lose their jobs. They're afraid to maybe, you know, get a pay cut. They're afraid to be sent home. So we need to address these topics. So I think the mind is a very important factor. Secondly, I believe, yeah, remote training sessions is obviously something that we started conducting. So we have twice a week, we're doing remote training sessions. And it's mostly product knowledge, it's mostly retail. You can now really drill into the essentials. And, you know, it's funny because most of the times we don't have the time to do that, right? But now really we do have a lot of time, actually. You know, we wake up in the morning and sometimes like, what am I going to do today? It's like Groundhog Day, every day is the same. So I think it's really good to invest time in remote trainings and focus on the retail. So this is what we do. The morale of the staff is crucial at the moment, and we need to keep everybody happy. 100%.
Absolutely. You mentioned kitting out with them with some fitness equipment of some sort. What was that initiative about?
Well, obviously we know that mind and body are directly connected, right? So, you know, I was thinking about how can we keep them engaged on a physical level as well without breaking the bank. And, you know, I was actually surprised because there's so many things you can purchase for small money. I think overall for all the stuff I have spent like less than 1,000 dirhams. We have purchased fitness mats, we've purchased these extension bands, we've sent them to the staff accommodation. And now we have, you know, fun competitions. We have group exercise classes, you know, I have my stuff right here, you know, I do my part. So it's good to keep them engaged and keep them on their toes, and they appreciate it. Absolutely, 100%.
Absolutely. Lindsay, again, the importance of staying connected, which was a theme within your article. It's obviously more meaningful now than ever. So this is how we were linked to Dr. Saliha, because you have some initiatives set up with the local wellbeing centre here in Dubai, like House Arabia. What was that initiative, and what exactly was the process with that with your teams? Oh, Lindsay, you're on mute again.
Thank you. The initiative with Lighthouse Arabia was actually set up through our corporate office, and it was something that came up on one of our, in the regional office here in Dubai, and it was something that was brought up on one of the town halls that we have. So we have consecutive meetings where we have a town hall and we bring the colleagues together, and the topic of mental health and well-being came up. And it was, you know, what are we doing in order to support? Because like Christian's just said, there was so many different colleagues who had who were going through uncertainty and perhaps didn't have the tools or just the experience in general to be able to deal with that. And the idea of collaborating with a local business like Lighthouse Arabia was the perfect opportunity to collaborate and to be able to utilize some of their tools and their resources and to connect with our people as well. You know, we talk a lot about human connection and the importance of that, and this touch experience that we're in within the industry that we're in. But I think human connection goes a lot further than that. Human connection is eye contact, it's connecting with the community. You know, it's reaching out and, you know, this sense of togetherness, this sense of coming together. And I'm sure in many different ways, a lot of people experience that, whether it was with their colleagues, with their families, with their, you know, with their neighbors. I know, for instance, I saw neighbors that I haven't seen in ages out with their families, and it was just so beautiful to see people coming together. I think with this in mind, then I'll hand it back to you, Emma.
Thank you, Lindsay. So Dr. Saliha, thank you again so much for joining us. Now you've heard what our SPA leaders have had to really go through the last 5-6 weeks with their teams, the living conditions that the teams are in, there are no flights out of the country for them to go back to their families. What advice can you give as a group globally? I can see that we've got people from Costa Rica, from Seychelles, from Greece, all listening in. What is your global advice to help really keep up the morale of these teams, that when it comes to reopening, these teams are, you know, positive and full of energy and ready to go?
So I think that you guys, I mean, it's wonderful to hear what everyone is doing and everyone is being so creative. I think I would like to start off by saying that this is a landscape event, and it's created, you know, elevated levels of stress and anxiety and prompted a lot of tunnel vision within the population generally, globally. And I think this is probably once in our lifetime where we will say the whole world literally is feeling very similar feelings. And so when information is unavailable, and as Chris said, that, you know, when there's fake news out there and there's inconsistent news and people feel just very unsure about what they know and what they shouldn't know and what they don't know, human beings have a desire for transparency. They have a desire for guidance, and they want to make sense of what happened. And then, as Lindsay said, most importantly, I think this desire that human beings have to feel connected. So I think organizing initiatives that amplify that connectedness and that sense of safety is going to be very important. So, you know, I would just like to share a couple of things, which is, as leaders, as people that are managing people, I think it's very, very important that communication that goes out be very, very clear, it be very transparent. I think sometimes we don't want to say things because we don't want to upset people, or we don't want to, say the wrong thing, but it's very important to be very candid rather than being charismatic in times of crisis. Secondly, I think different stages of the crisis are going to require different levels of communication. So in the beginning, the frequency of that might be very, very important, but then you can sort of move on to these broadcast type of messages, but then this narrowcast type of message also, which might be connecting with people that are, that are living alone maybe, or that might be struggling with something. Those are sort of one-on-one type of conversations, or maybe having this sort of open door policy where people can drop in to your Zoom room and connect with you, where they feel that you are approachable and accessible. And then lastly, I think what Yolanda shared and what Chris shared, I think these are very important, as well as Kamal, that having a sense of community that you're creating, which is not just about work-related trainings, but also something that is social, it is fun, that engages different parts of themselves. I think those are going to be very important. But as leaders, on the second part of what you asked, I think it's important that you be very, very aware about being able to identify, understand, and respond to mental health crises. This is where mental health training comes in. So you actually know that, wait, this person is sad versus depressed. This person is worried, which all of us are to some degree, or is this person clinically anxious? Or, and how do I respond to that? Because that is not something you learn. It is that you're sort of born with. It is a way of learning what is crisis response, mental health crisis response actually look like.
Yeah, amazing. And how would you, how do you differentiate the sad to the depressed? Like, what can our SPA leaders look for when they're, Zooming? Because, when you're on Zoom with your teams, it's very hard to get that emotion across, or that feeling and thoughts. What tips could you give to our SPA leaders to really help differentiate that?
So we have a 6-hour training, so I don't think we have that kind of time right now. But there is a whole set of symptoms that we look for, and you'd be surprised as to what you can tell about a person through a Zoom call. If they're looking disheveled, if they're not looking in their same way, they're not engaging in the same way. Maybe you guys have social events and they just don't keep showing up and they're withdrawn a little bit, or you hear from other people. So I think having these communities is really important, that you actually pick up from other people that I'm worried about her. She's drinking a little bit too much. Substance abuse is a huge issue that's come up now. So this is not just about anxiety and depression, but a lot of substance abuse is going on at this time because people are alone, and this is the way they're sort of numbing and coping with themselves. And so you would be able to, there's a list of symptoms for anxiety, there's a list of symptoms for depression. So I would say for leaders, people leaders, I think it's important to get trained in mental health first aid. And mental health first aid, just like I couldn't talk you through physical first aid, what mental health first aid is, it actually teaches you how to respond to mental health crises. And that means it takes you through a set of symptoms. It teaches you how to have that conversation. It teaches you how to be able to respond to those conversations and get the person to the right help. At the Lighthouse, we have 16 support groups running right now, and we've had support groups as long as Lighthouse has been around, but these are free of charge. Anyone can access these. So this is not where you need money for all kinds of support. And all these support groups are led by psychologists, unlike other support groups, which are led by community members. So it ends up being like a therapy group, which is free of charge. So I think it'll be important for leaders to know what community resources they can guide their people to once they identify the issue.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay,
Emma, if I may, I just wanted to jump on to what Dr. Salia was saying. We were also lucky enough in the Jumeirah group to have a session with Dr. Salia. Thank you very much. It had a phenomenal impact. And I totally agree with the communication. This is the time we cannot over communicate. However, messages, we always tend to want to communicate the positive messages. And I must say, from my experience, I've really appreciated from the leaders that I report to that when there is a less positive message that needs to be communicated, they've been very transparent, and without delay, the message comes out. And I think that is also how we should be with our team members, whether it's positive or less positive, rather that transparency during times like this is of utmost importance.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely essential. Thank you, Yolanda. Anyone else wants any input in this part before we move on? All good. Okay, so on to our next part, which is when we do reopen, how do we bring that essence of well-being back into the workplace at a time where it's still quite uneasy? It's, you know, our industry is all about touch and connection, and there will be uncertainties for sure. What plans have you got in place, or how do you feel, Lindsay, in terms of how you are going to be moving forward with your reopening strategy and bringing that sense of well-being back into the workplace?
Many of the teams that are returning back to the workforce are returning back with smaller teams. There's a lot of uncertainty, not only just now, but also on the horizon, you know, not really understanding what's next. And, you know, I'm a big advocate of compassionate leadership and really opening up that open dialogue to your colleagues, making sure that you continue to inspire them, and really just, you know, making sure on a day-to-day basis that they still feel like they're contributing, that they're growing. I'm going to bring back into that loop that sense of relationship and bringing people back in, making them feel like they're community. Many of the people within the GCC that are at our properties right now, you know, are away from their families. They don't know the next time that they'll be able to see their families. And I think that's heartbreaking for a lot of people. Family is what brings us together. So it's about reuniting them and inspiring them. I think as leaders, we have our own set of tools. They don't work for everybody, but, you know, continue to inspire them through new podcasts they could listen to or new online courses that they can do. I think that's one stance I would take, but also I think there's a sense of empowerment. A lot of the times our leaders know what the answers are, and I have a lot of my teams come to me and say, you know, Lindsay, what should I do here? What should I do here? And I always push the question back to them and say, well, what do you think you should do? And they always have the right answer, but they just need that little nudge to get going. So I think inspiration, empowerment, and compassion are three key values that we're going to bring back to our teams. And making sure that they feel inspired and that they feel confident. We on probably every 10 days at a course, Sebastian Bazin, our CEO, comes on and he gives us a really real video. And what I really admire about him is he is raw, he has compassion, and he also has confidence. And I think, you know, we being the colleagues to him, it's really important for me to walk away and feel confident, or to have a very transparent conversation of understanding exactly what's going on. So I think all of those things as a whole are going to be really important as a leader, to make sure that you're continuing to communicate openly with your colleagues, to inspire them, and to really give them the support that they need to.
Yes, for sure, absolutely. Chris, what plans have you got back in the workplace to keep your staff morale boosted and motivated for when this reopening happens?
Well, I think I really loved what Lindsay was saying, because I think empowerment will be very important. It will give them a big sense of inclusion, and that's absolutely crucial at the moment. Successful businesses thrive on motivated workforces, right? So I think motivation will be absolute key. You all heard that saying, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. And whoever does not have their opening documents right and their SOPs right cannot drive the right message. So if you haven't done it now, please take the time to sit and draft these documents, because you want to be sure to drive the right message. And it is sensitive information at the moment. The new normal, how I call it, right, will definitely be a big change for everybody. Might be coming to work, they might be expecting their colleague to step into the door, but this colleague never arrives because already gone, you know. So we don't know what is going on in their minds. So I think it's very important to take it step by step, communicate the right information, be sensitive, and And maybe, you know, what always works for us is maybe even to do an outing when the time is right. I mean, not now, but, you know, get the teams together and get them out of the spa and, you know, just have a good time and just be there for them, you know, and that's definitely going to give a big sense of inclusion, is again going to take the anxiety away. And to touch base on what Yolanda was saying, transparency is key. Do not cream the situation. Do not try to pep talk when there's no need to, because just be truthful in your message and how you get it across. And then I think the motivation will kickstart on its own, and it's going to come back for sure.
Absolutely. Yolanda, anything you'd like to touch on? We have had in the Q&A, some people ask whether the programs and the motivational, your colleague Connect platform will still remain post-COVID. Is that something you're definitely going to keep in place moving forward?
Yes, Emma, most definitely. In fact, Colleague Connect was due to launch before COVID-19 hit us. So the intention was there before the pandemic arrived. So we will definitely keep focusing on topics that colleagues want to talk about. Of course, the content has to stay relevant, and we got to keep feeding insightful and entertaining content. Like, you know, now we have one of the pillars, J Safety, focusing on the daily insights, how we are adapting to the pandemic. Probably, I hope in a while we can gradually phase out J Safety when we are getting back to the new norm, so that we most certainly will adapt and adopt all the content accordingly. I'd also just like to jump in on what Lindsay and Chris was saying. Yeah, that empowering, because going back into our operations is certainly going to be something unknown, right, for all of us. It's a new norm. We've got to act according to new SOPs. So I think one of the most important things and tools we can empower our teams with is confidence within themselves, and confidence to deal with our guests coming in. And that'll certainly also make a very big difference in the overall experience of the guest.
Absolutely. Kamal, anything you'd like to add to your reopening strategies and bringing that essence of wellbeing back? Oh, Kamal, you're on mute.
Okay.
You're back.
So there is one topic I think everybody's facing at this stage, which is the people that lost their jobs and people who are on unpaid or half salaries or certain things happening nowadays. I think this is a topic that just talking to people and let them understand, at least securing their jobs, this is the phase that they have job, because the economic situation is quite bad. So I saw in the question, somebody was asking in the question about what we can do to drive business. I think the business is going to take a bit of time to kick back. However, we need to, with all what's happening, I think, about empowerment, I will emphasize on the word valued. And I think now, as a human, when we see people we're losing loved ones, friends, all around the world, we're losing them. And we see that the humanity and how important to look after our people. And I believe nowadays, more than ever, the therapist and the trainers, whoever is, we are an alternative people to the healthcare, to look after the mental and the emotional well-being as preventive measures to the health situation, right? So as we have seen so much how the nurses and the healthcare sector was well looked after and recognized, I think our people nowadays, when we go back to work, they are key people to look after them and value them. It's part of empowerment, as everybody said, but it's more like to give them how important and assure them, because they are the ambassadors for guests to come back. and more even though, because when guest is confident in their hygiene and their safety, security, and what looked after them, they will be their ambassadors to bring their other customers back. I'll add on this also from operation perspective. As a hotel, it's common practice now in every place that we screen clients when they come, when the guests sit. I think sanitizing and cleaning is something gonna be big. We're looking as well to minimize the number of members that be coming to the gym. So it will be based on bookings and limited number of the capacity, 10, 15 members, depends on the size of the gym, how we can have, how many number of people we can have. For the people as well, for the employees, many of the companies, they have insurance, but also for employees to know that they are insured. If something happened to them, they are secured, they are assured. This is a crucial point as well. And hopefully when we open in the coming 2 months, we're planning to have, as part of the World Wellness Weekend, the global events happening every year on September. So we're going to organize this event as World Wellness Weekend on the 19-20 September to spread the wellness approach and to bring as much as possible with guests with absolutely social distancing and make sure it's in safe environment to talk about it and spread the health and wellness aspect within the community as well.
Yeah, incredible. Pierre, Louis, if you just put yourself off mute.
Yes.
What are you doing within Biologique Recherche in terms of, well-being of your staff?
I think the two key words for us is preparation and communication. Preparation is key because we've seen in some places that they are rushing to reopen. So you really have to prepare all the documents, the regulation, the rules, not only for our teams, but also for the customers. And make sure you interact with your team so that they fully understand and agree with your.
Oh, I think we might have lost you. Okay, we'll come back to Pierre. I think we've lost you. The connection's not so great. So are you back? You're back. No. Okay. Lindsay, do you have anything you want to add before we close with Dr. Saliha? Lindsay, do you have anything you'd like to add before we close with Dr. Saliha?
No, I think everyone's collectively covered the most aspects of that conversation. Emma, thanks.
Emma, may I ask a question of the panel, particularly on the first question? Panel, you say these nice things about how important it is to look after yourself, but can't hear you, I'm afraid. You say these nice things about how important it is to look after your staff, but when you get back, there's mass unemployment. You'll be able to have the pick of the bunch. Why are you bothering? Why aren't you just demanding more of your staff, and anybody who doesn't like it, well, there's another one. What do you say to that kind of attitude? There must be some operators who will be thinking that way. Who wants to answer that?
Well, Mark, I think I'm happy to add something to that topic. As you know, for us in our spas, it takes such a long time to train our team members to the specific protocols, to the standards. So we invest a lot of time and energy into that. So I've never quite had that opinion of get them in, get them out, another colleague starting. I think it's really important that if you're serious about the treatments and the guest experience that you want to give to your guests, that you invest into that training. And I do think that the best team comes, it's a combination of different factors, but it's certainly also sensed within a team spirit if that kind of thinking is coming from the leaders. So in my opinion, it would be sad to have that kind of approach. And in order to bring out the best in our teams, we have to be confident that we are selling the right individuals to our guests. I'm stating the word selling. That's not really the word. That we are giving the best possible quality of therapists and team members to our guests.
So I think that's a very good answer, in the sense that in order, looking after your staff enhances the guest experience. But I suppose I'll turn the question, I was being a bit cheeky and facetious, but I suppose I'd turn the question around and say to people, what would you advise staff coming back in their approach to management? Because it's tough all round. The managers have a tough time as well, because they're often cut in the middle from investors, or even, even people on this panel, senior people, are pushed and pulled. You haven't got it easy. So I suppose, what would you advise to staff and junior managers, and in the way they approach, they manage their bosses?
I'm going to step in there, and I think there needs to be respect among teams, that if there's the value of compassion comes up amongst your colleagues, it also comes up, within the management. A lot of managers have had to make a lot of really tough decisions from the beginning. They've had to perhaps let people go that have been in very tough situations. They've had to send them back home, or decrease their salary. And I think that's been really, really tough for managers too. So to walk in and think that the managers haven't had something to deal with, they absolutely have. There's been some really, really hard decisions. So I would recommend that walking in, that there's a collective, compassion for everyone on the team, in a sense of, we're all in this together and we're all in the same situation. So I think, they've had to go through making really difficult decisions. I know some of the people, even from our office, that's what they do all day. They have to sit there and make people redundant. And that's a big grief to have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So I think ensuring that there's a level of support, amongst the team and bringing the team together, that would be my recommendation to the colleagues.
Yeah, I think what Lindsay said, I totally agree. And we have gotten so used to, as SPA leaders, we chasing daily goals, we chasing KPIs, we chasing budgets. It's a lot about numbers, of course, because we're running a business. However, I think we all aware that our industry and globally we're on our knees. So going back into our operations, I think we have to start with small steps and focusing in the onset definitely on the experience of the guest. Only for the guest to be returning is already a big achievement and a big step forward. And business will recover at some point. However, it will take time. So we will be chasing goals and budgets and KPIs again, but I think our experience of what we wish to deliver will be more at the forefront than ever before.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think business should take a backseat for now, and we should focus on people and quality and rebuilding the business. The money will come, but now I think is not the time to go back to work and say, oh my God, what was my budget for the end of 2020? I'm going to make that. It's not the right approach at the moment. We're all in this together, and we should be focusing on people and keeping everybody happy.
I think too, just to add to what everyone said, is that it's super important that the people who do come back to the operations, that do have jobs, that there's a sense of gratitude, or however you want to, thankfulness of the guests that are going to return, because not everybody is going to come back into the space and feel comfortable. And I think it's about adding value to the guest and making them feel valued, so that they return, making them feel valued and making them feel safe. So I definitely think that that's an element that, how as a team can we come together to make our guests feel more valued, to make them feel safer in a way that they feel comfortable and not overwhelmed, because I think it's been an overwhelming experience for everyone. And that sense of value that Kamal touched on earlier is definitely an important component.
Absolutely.
If I may add, Mark, something, there is an education part as well from the managers to employees, is about the employees to start understanding the business factors, and for employees to understand what the owners or management expectation. So now they have to be kind of partners, and being supportive by, like, if an employee with these circumstances is on half salary, he will completely understand this is much better than being on without job. So this I think a very important part from management to the team, to have this education process as well.
Yeah, I think that's really key, Kamal. And I guess before we end this part, Saliha, Dr. Saliha, we've obviously been focusing on the employment on our employees' side, but what advice could you give the leaders during this time when they're all reopening, and what tips can you offer them to really motivate their teams to try and do the best job they can despite the current situation? Oh, you're on mute, Dr. Saliha.
Sorry, but I think everyone is really on point here. They seem like they're ahead of the game. I think it's very important. I would just like to add that it's important to acknowledge their anxieties and not just necessarily say, well, this is what we're doing and this is the protocol and this is what we're preparing, but also to name the anxiety. When we say in psychology that whatever you name, you tame. So if you say, I know you're anxious and I know you're worried and I know you're concerned, you are more able to contain that emotion better. So I think acknowledging is going to be part of that. Secondly, communicating. And if they feel, you guys are in the wellness industry, that the sense is a very important sense. An important sort of decision maker for people. What you create, what kind of environment you create, the mood you create is also a very sensory experience. If they sense that you have their best interests at heart and that you are taking the highest levels of precautions, and those are communicated clearly, preemptively, frequently, with confidence, as well as with leadership being present within the facility. I think sometimes not sitting up on top of a hill, but being in the sort of trenches with the people, well, not necessarily trenches, but in the spas with people. I think it's important. I'm the managing director of the Lighthouse. I can sit in the comfort of my home and tell my team, hey, it's okay for you to go back to the clinic, but it's not going to feel the same unless I'm there with them. So I think it's going to be important that the communication is happening, but you guys are on the ground with the people in there, sort of engaging with clientele, and then also teaching them mental health. I think it's important. I've done some of these talks for the Jumeirah group and etc. And I think it's important to skill up the people on how do you manage anxiety. Anxiety is here to stay. It's not going anywhere, even if COVID is gone, because that's just uncertain. We don't know what the next 12 to 18 months are going to look like. And so teaching them how to manage their anxiety is going to be very, very important. This is, again, not something we are born with. It is a skill. It must be taught. And teaching them the importance of just the physical, having a physical fit body. So even if you are exposed to COVID, that you have the immunity to fight it. And I think just also in letting them know that, listen, the clients are as scared and as nervous as you are. So for you to feel scared that you're physically under, in a sort of exposed way, well, the clients are not going to expose themselves either if they weren't sort of taking their precautions. So we're all literally in the same boat. And so reminding them that, because like I said, when we are in times of crisis, we can really, our aperture narrows, we can really get into tunnel vision and disconnect from like what's happening in reality. So reminding them that everyone is actually struggling with the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm conscious of time. Let's move on to our final part of this session, which is all about silver linings and what are the positive opportunities within our industry that we will gather as a result of this crisis. Lindsay, what are your thoughts on the silver linings of this? Oh, Lindsay, you're on mute.
I think personally, everybody's been able to identify their own silver linings. Everyone's dealt with it. Everyone has a completely unique situation. But I think within the industry, if we're talking about spa, and the idea of this this touch experience right now, and where we are with this, I think that this is a really perfect opportunity for and just of how we talk about wellness in spas, because we made this transition that spa and fitness equals wellness, and actually it's holistically so much more than that. I think that the touch experience is somewhat limited in access to us. It's a perfect opportunity for spa managers to make that transition from spa manager to a wellness manager. Some of this might be, working closer with getting away from fitness, obviously not excluding it, but to expand into different areas like nutrition, looking, I know you guys have a session on collaboration and the importance of that. And, Lighthouse is a perfect opportunity in terms to see how would this business here as a Lighthouse, how would we be able to collaborate together using our database, say for instance, at one of our hotels, and their database and expertise to bring the community together and to create that connection. So again, you're working with the same set of values. How can we bring on experiences like meditation, mindfulness, nutrition, cooking lessons, movement, embodiment, all of the things that we actually can see as an opportunity. How can we start building revenue lines for that? And I think once we begin to build the framework for that, and that framework is in place, we're going to see, a couple months down the road that together with the spa framework, those fit together to create this beautiful wellness portfolio. So I'm an opportunistic in that sense that if this is an opportunity for us to build a framework that is not traditional to our spa, our four walls of spa, but to build it beyond that and to start getting into the other experiences that if we're not a wellness designated property, it gives us the opportunity to do so.
Chris, within a saturated market that we're in at the moment in Dubai, with properties beside, there's so much choice. What are you going to implement as a result of this crisis? And do you think that, with discounts and that there is such a saturated market, do you feel that is going, such a tongue twister, do you think that that's going to impact you? Or do you think that because people are so eager to be touched and to have these treatments that you will see an uprise?
Well, I think obviously things will start off very slow, but like Lindsay said, I mean, for us, we already have that wellness component as a brand. And I think it will become more and more important in the future, because this whole immune boosting, mindfulness, and creativity, moving away from plain spa treatments to having this wellness component will be a big plus for us. But I just want to touch base on what you said about the pricing. We've seen it before, and we will see it again in Dubai, that people will be cannibalizing each other in terms of discounts, waves of discounts that probably will go through the city. So I can only advise you to not participate in that and try to focus on your average check, to keep it as high as possible at the beginning. Focus on your existing client base. They know your pricing. They are more than happy to pay it. and maybe put the new client acquisition, on hold for a while until you have budgets to again focus on that, because it will cost you money. Another thing that I believe will change definitely is that there will be a better way of negotiating with owning companies and general managers and people who are really making the decisions, especially asset managers as well, in terms of business models, right? I mean, the scales need to be very balanced in terms of financial risk. So, everybody wanted rent and fixed amounts. Maybe now this can move into revenue share scenarios. And they know that as well. They know that they have to show this flexibility now. So from a financial perspective, it's a good point of negotiation at the moment. Same goes for barter agreements. You might have a great service to offer, but you might not have the money. So try to look at strong affiliations at the moment. Try to look at setting up new barter agreements. We've just recently partnered with Fitness First, and it's amazing, what you can do with strong barter agreements for your business. And that will become more and more a focus point, I think, because people will not have big budgets to spend anymore. So try to work with the services and try to barter. This is another thing that will arise from this as a silver lining, hopefully.
Yeah, if I may add something, I'm personally very optimistic with the post-COVID situation, in the sense that, first of all, wellness will come back at the top of people's agenda. What we see here is that there is a strong correlation between overweight and COVID incurrence, and pollution has a strong impact too. So again, you see that prevention, healthy approach is going to be key for the future. And for me, the second revolution that we need to think about is the digital revolution, because we are a very conservative business. And the COVID has shown that there is something to do with digital in terms of training, customer relationship management, in terms of online consultation as well. So I think the time has come for our industry to invent our own way of digital wellness as well. So that's, for me, the two key consequences of COVID for our industry.
Mal, earlier you mentioned that we are now going into the new normal. Can you elaborate a bit on what you meant with that?
I think in spas, always cleanliness is the key of, you go to the spa and it smells nice and look beautiful and everything. Just like cleanliness and hygiene is going to be the #1 top priority in the new normal way, especially with disinfecting after each guest coming in. I think turnaround time is something to be considered. Like, we will not have anymore like the 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever each spa decide on. I think we might consider at least half an hour time for turnaround from each room, to take the other guest. So no back-to-back on expense of health of colleagues or customers. So there is some process needs to be taken, measures of hygiene and sanitizing. I think from business point of view, I totally agree about the wellness aspect. However, there is a lot of machines and technology and things, but I believe people will go more and more to basics, back to basics with the offerings. And personally, I think we will go to trim the menu or whatever it's to the essentials. And I believe we'll see much more. Person training has been always booming and growing business. I think it's going to be continuing to be person training more and more as a support for emotional and connection between people, or socializing, as well as as a mentor for sports or feeling well, whatever, on all aspects of wellness.
Okay, amazing. Right. We are short on time, but there are a few really amazing questions that have come through from those that have joined with us. So I'm just going to, Lindsay, over to you with this question, if you'd like to answer. What are you doing in your spa to bring back customers and business back? What key things have you got in plan to bring those returning customers back and new customers as well?
I think our focus will be on value for the guest and making them feel safe. One of the key things that I'll be speaking with the teams about is I think it's an essential element right now to yield your business. If we think about this big picture and if we think about surviving over the long hot summer months, there might need to be some more tough decisions that are made, I think, in terms of our colleagues. But I think, one of the good opportunities would be to yield your business. So even if we go back, it doesn't mean we have to go back, 30%, 7 days a week. Maybe that 30% is yielded into, specific business hours, Tuesdays and Thursdays, or maybe one day on the weekend from 11 to 8. But for me, I think it's an important component to be really realistic about what the next couple months is to bring. The costs that are associated with that. So business yielding is one. From a customer perspective, this just isn't coming from me, but I attended the Techno Gym webinar last week, and they had a really great speaker on there. And he was talking about, again, reinforcing connection to your experts and the connection to community. And I think if you can make the people who are returning to your spas or to your hotels feel comfortable and feel confident, then that's one of the steps. I know a brand. I work with Fairmont, so I use Fairmont as an example. But if I know that is a brand that has pioneered over the last 7 years as one of the top brands in hospitality, I trust their health and hygiene, and I'm not going to go to a place where that isn't trusted. So I think that these brands that as a local that we've associated ourselves with, that we trust, that we go back to, that we have this connection with the therapist, they know what's going on with our lives. I think we need to continue to nurture that and make people feel valued. And when they feel valued, they'll feel safe.
Thank you, Lindsay. Yolanda, what SOPs have you introduced or are going to be introducing? Oh, you're on mute.
Emma, I think the SOPs are very much aligned all over our spa industry, and it comes back to the same goal. But what we are putting in place, and we decided as for our properties here in the UAE, what is our best assets? Our strongest point is probably our beautiful beaches. So we decided to focus on that and combine it into different packages. We definitely sense a need that guests will want to come for a beach experience. However, they also want to have a spa treatment. They also want to have lunch. So combining that into day options, overnight options, weekend options, to have a 360-degree experience, and also that you are able to give a self-care item from your retail selection included, that your guests can continue the experience at home. I think what's important and what we try to achieve with this is to have options for our guests, to definitely have a value package, and also now is not the time to be too restrictive. If the guests cannot have the spa experience on the day, why not extend it for a month? We should be euros in the next months to come, and that is how we should be embracing our guests. I'd also like to just point out that, a silver lining from the COVID-19 pandemic in this region, the GCC region, has definitely also been, we've had a wonderful initiative being taken by one of the product distributors to establish a therapist learning community online, and that's been just phenomenal by upskilling up skilling over 200 therapists with a BABTech Introduction to Anatomy and Physiology course, which we usually find in this region is a little bit lacking for the therapists. So I have to see that, I have to honestly say that's been a great initiative, and it's been also supported by various product companies and equipment companies sponsoring that. So the learning initiatives, which over and above the learning that you do within your team, I think there's rarely time for team members to do online studies whilst they're working. So that's definitely also been a great silver lining. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's all we've got time for today. Loads of insight. Dr. Saliha, do you have any final words of wisdom for us all that you could spread across the globe before we end this session?
So I hear a lot of these leaders speaking a lot about their people, and I would just like to end with our people as only as good as we are, I think, in the end. And so really making sure that all of these people leaders are taking some time out to take care of themselves, because Lindsay, you used the word compassion. There is such a thing called compassion fatigue. There is something called caregiver burnout. And I think if you guys are not taking care of yourselves, it could eventually take a toll on you as well. So making sure that you're just pausing a little bit and checking in with yourself as to how you're doing mentally, how you're doing emotionally. I know as a mother and as a leader of my clinic, it's something that I have to very consciously make an intention to do. So it needs to be a conscious intention to check in with yourself every day and to make sure that you're giving what you need as the oxygen masks drops. We put it on ourselves before we put it on our people, because they're only as good as we are in the end. So making sure you take care of yourselves.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for tuning in from across the globe. Thank you for all your messages. And thank you, panelists, for joining me today on this first session of the World Spa and Wellness Conference. I wish you all to stay safe, keep positive, and we will see you all hopefully very soon. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and take care. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Finished, Boki.